we are now joined by Audacy MLB insider Bob Nightengale. Bob, it's Pat and Brad. Happy opening day, brother. How are you?
Yeah, doing great. How about you guys?
We're doing awesome, man. Bob,
great.
let's start with the big change in Major League Baseball this year. ABS, teams getting 2 challenges for balls and strikes, which can be initiated by the pitcher, catcher, or the hitter. Do you think this will be good for baseball like the pitch clock has been? And how far away do you think we are before completely automated strike zones? I saw some former umpires are not too happy that they could be humiliated for getting calls wrong. Your thoughts on ABS?
I think we will have a full strike zone at one point, maybe 5 years from now. I don't think this will be as successful as the pitch clock. I don't think the fans are going to be standing with their bated breath like, oh, let's see what the call is here. And I think teams would be careful, like, hey, you better save something for the ninth inning. I was at the game last night in San Francisco. It was just, one challenge system and proved that, Bill Miller was right. I don't think the umpires mind it as much as people think, in the sense that there's so much gambling now in baseball, is that nobody wants to have a blown call in the ninth inning. That, oh man, is this guy in the take? How come his strike zone was a little bit different there? So I don't think they mind it as much as people think.
Yeah, I definitely saw it in practice today, and I love how swift it is, Bob. I think that's a very encouraging sign. This is going to be a successful development in the overall MLB game. Bob, before a single pitch was thrown today, the biggest news was that the Brewers received unfortunate news about their star outfielder and Jackson Chourio placed on the IL with a fractured hand. What's the timetable for his return? How massive is this loss for the Brew Crew, and who will have to step up to ensure Milwaukee doesn't face plant to start the season? But today, man, they absolutely walloped the Chicago White Sox 14-2, so it may be a moot point.
Yeah, obviously this guy played with it for 3 weeks, and he fractured it, March 4th, March 5th, and just because it kept bothering him, so okay, let's redo it again, or do some more imaging. And so, yeah, he should be back by mid-April. So it's just kind of strange that it was never diagnosed ahead of time. He played for the WBC. I saw some of the WBC games. He wasn't lighting it up. He was the number 9 hitter, but still, you never thought he was playing with a fractured hand. So I don't think it'd be that serious of a thing. I really don't.
Well, definitely some encouraging news to say the least. Bob, let's go ahead and stick in the NL Central. PECOTA projects the Cubs to potentially run away with this division, projecting 90 wins for the Northsiders. Not a great start today as they got beat down really by a suboptimal Washington Nationals team. Matthew Boyd absolutely got lit up early in the contest as the Cubs lost in convincing fashion. But what are your expectations for Craig Counsell's club this season? Are the Cubs the biggest threat to the LA Dodgers in the NL this year?
I think they're a threat. I don't think the biggest threat. I think the biggest threat is Philadelphia Phillies once again. A stacked lineup, and now you got a Zach Wheeler back too. The Mets would be a better team. Hey, the Cubs are good, but Alex Bregman, people go nuts about Bregman, but he replaced Kyle Tucker. It wasn't an addition to Kyle Tucker, and Tucker had an unbelievable first half for the Cubs. I think they're a better team. The Cubs are. But, the Brewers aren't going away. I know they, traded away Freddie Peralta. But, how many years in a row do we say, oh, this is a Cubs year and it's all going to catch up the Brewers? And every year the Brewers make everybody look stupid because they're always winning the division. I mean, they're a power in that division. I still think they'll win, 90 games or so. I think both teams make the playoffs. But I'd be shocked if the Brewers don't win the playoffs.
Talking with Bob Nightengale here on BetMGM Tonight on Westwood One Sports. He's Brad Evans, I'm Pat Boyle. Bob, do you think this regular season will have a different feel to it with a lockout looming over everybody's heads like a dark cloud? For example, would teams be maybe more or less aggressive at the trade deadline for non-rental players if they think there won't be a 2027 season? Oppositely, would teams be as aggressive as ever for rental players, a.k.a. guys on expiring contracts? And then overall, do you think the play on the field be better or worse off for any reason revolving around the likely chance that there is no baseball in 2027?
I really don't think it'll be a big impact. I mean, the players aren't talking about it. The management isn't talking about it. The media is talking about it. When the media's talking about it, the fans are talking about it. But, you're still talking about December 1st. It's not going to interfere with the season. It's not like 94 when the players are the ones who went on strike on, August 11th, August 12th. Knocked off the postseason. So no talk of that. Players aren't going to do that. If there's a lockout, we'll see how long it lasts. And there was a lockout, at the last CBA, and still were able to squeeze in all the games, the 162 anyway. So, if this goes on lockout December 1st, if we're hitting March, there's still no resolution, then I can see people getting worried. But, I think now it's just too early for anybody to start panicking.
All right. Well, that's encouraging news to say the least. Bob, let's go big picture real quick. Give us a dark horse AL Cy Young winner potentially and an NL Cy Young candidate as well. What hurler could be the biggest breakouts or general surprise in your mind this year?
My surprise in National League is Zach Gallen, who's pitching tonight for the Diamondbacks against Los Angeles Dodgers. This guy's had a fish top 5 a couple times in Cy Young balloting. I think this guy's going to have such a chip on his shoulder, like, hey, you guys didn't want me. You guys are worried about the draft compensation. Let me show you what you're missing. So he's my dark horse candidate in the National League. American League, it's hard to think School's going to win 3 in a row. But yet, here he was dominant again tonight. So if I had to pick my dark horse, it'd probably be Brian Wu of the Seattle Mariners. This guy's got enormous talent. He's got some offense to work with now. I think he's got a chance to be that guy.
I love that pick. As Brad called him yesterday on our show in honor of Ric Flair, Brian Woo! Talking with Bob Nightengale. Talking with Bob Nightengale here on BetMGM Tonight for another 2 minutes or so. Bob, finally, who is a surprise package in both the AL and NL this year in terms of teams? If you're feeling saucy, who will be a playoff team from each league that not a lot of folks see coming? Or if you'd like to go the other route, any teams you think missed the playoffs, which would be a big surprise?
Yeah, last year I really thought the Mets were going to miss the playoffs. I think people might be too high on them. We'll see. And to change the whole clubhouse culture here, see what works. It shouldn't be surprising, but nobody's talking about the Phillies. They say, well, they've let us down the last couple of years. They, struggled in the playoffs. I still think they have one big run in them. So I'll go the Phillies in the National League. One of these years you keep waiting for the Brewers to do something, but I think they're just still a little too young. But it wouldn't shock me to see the Brewers, get to the World Series. I'm not sure there's anybody in the National League West outside the Dodgers that that are going to scare anybody. I think the Giants would be better and win 85 wins, but I'm not sure they can. They have the horses to knock off the Dodgers. In the American League, I love the Tigers. I thought it was a stroke of genius to get Framber Valdez, get their ace in waiting early, and so when Scuba leaves, they can slide him in. Seattle, of course, has got that great rotation. Been around the Yankees last few days in Phoenix during their spring training games, and then last night there's a different confidence in there. They said their spring was unbelievable. They're healthy. So the Yankees could be that team. Like, okay, after all these years, 2009, maybe this is they finally on that thing.
Bob, we got about another minute here, so really quickly, I ask you about the breaking news that came down a little while ago. The Cubs locking up Nico Horner for a 6-year contract after they locked up Pete Crow Armstrong for a 6-year contract earlier in the week. So do you think the Cubbies locking down their young players, are they maybe a team to watch at the trade deadline? Maybe as a team that goes all in an effort to stand toe-to-toe with the Dodgers? And, what do you think? Are the Cubbies in a championship window here now?
They definitely are. The Cubs have spent got over $400 million this winter. Nobody spent more than they did. Not the Blue Jays or Dodgers, anybody. They're all in. And before, that franchise was being called too cheap. And now it's like, they're, locking up that core. So they got people excited in Chicago. I think it's a smart business moves. I thought it was a brilliant move getting to that contract, $115 million for Crow Armstrong. So, no, I think you're absolutely right. The trade deadline, it'd be silly for them to not go all out and say, you know what, we're going to grab some guys, and even if it costs us some prize prospects, let's try to win this thing now.
Heck yeah. The rest of the crew around me are all big Cubs fans. So I did like what you said about the Yankees. I did about 10 post-game shows from last year on the Fan. So you're speaking all the right words to us here, Bob. We appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the rest of opening day, and we can't wait to chat with you soon.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you, guys. Take care now.